Marcus wiped the sweat from his forehead as he pushed the shopping cart through the crowded grocery store. His 8-year-old daughter Emma walked beside him, chattering excitedly about her upcoming school science project. It had been 3 years since his wife Sarah passed away in a car accident, leaving him to raise Emma alone. The transition from being a married father to a single dad had been the hardest thing he'd ever faced, but he was determined to give his daughter the best life possible. As they turned into the cereal aisle, Marcus noticed a commotion near the end cap. A group of 3 teenagers, probably around 17 or 18, had cornered a young woman who appeared to be in her mid-20s. She was holding a small basket and seemed visibly uncomfortable as the boys made loud, inappropriate comments about her appearance. The woman tried to move away, but they blocked her path, laughing and making crude gestures. Marcus felt his jaw tighten. He had always been taught to stand up for those who couldn't defend themselves, a lesson his own father had drilled into him from childhood. But now, as a single parent, every decision carried extra weight. What if these kids were dangerous? What if something happened to him? Emma would be left without any parent at all. Emma tugged at his sleeve. "Daddy, why are those boys being mean to that lady?" Her innocent question cut through his hesitation like a knife. He looked down at his daughter's concerned face and realized what kind of example he wanted to set for her. This was a teachable moment about doing the right thing, even when it was scary. "Stay close to me, sweetheart," Marcus whispered to Emma as he approached the group. His heart was pounding, but his voice remained steady and calm. "Excuse me, guys," he said, positioning himself between the teenagers and the woman. "I think the lady would like to finish her shopping in peace." The tallest of the 3 boys, wearing a backwards baseball cap, turned to face Marcus with a smirk. "Mind your own business, old man. We're just having some fun." The other 2 laughed and continued making comments, but Marcus noticed the woman had taken a small step back, giving herself some breathing room. Marcus kept his voice level but firm. "I'm sure you are, but this isn't the place for it. There are kids around, including my daughter." He gestured toward Emma, who was watching the interaction with wide eyes. "Why don't you guys head over to the electronics section or something? I heard they just got some new video games in stock." The second teenager, shorter but more aggressive than the first, stepped closer to Marcus. "What are you gonna do about it if we don't? You're just some loser dad with your little kid. You can't tell us what to do." The tension in the air was thick, and other shoppers had started to notice the confrontation, some stopping to watch while others hurried past, avoiding eye contact. Marcus could feel his protective instincts kicking in, not just for the woman, but for his daughter who was witnessing everything. He knew that backing down now would send the wrong message to Emma about standing up for others. At the same time, he couldn't let this escalate into something physical with his child present. He needed to find a way to diffuse the situation without making it worse. "Look, I'm not trying to cause any trouble," Marcus said, raising his hand slightly in a peaceful gesture. "I just think everyone should be able to shop without being bothered. That's all I'm asking for." Behind him, he could hear the woman's quiet voice saying, "Thank you." But he kept his focus on the teenagers, watching for any sign that they might become violent. The third boy, who had been mostly quiet, suddenly grabbed a box of cereal from the shelf and tossed it into the air, catching it with an exaggerated flourish. "Oh yeah? Well, maybe we don't feel like leaving. Maybe we like this aisle." He threw the box higher this time, and it came down hard, bursting open and scattering cereal across the floor with a loud crash. The sound echoed through the store, and Marcus knew there was no going back now. Store employees would be here soon, and the situation was escalating exactly the way he had hoped it wouldn't. Emma moved closer to his leg, clearly frightened by the noise and the growing tension. Marcus put a protective hand on his daughter's shoulder while keeping his eyes on the 3 teenagers, who seemed emboldened by their friend's destructive act. "That's enough," Marcus said firmly. "You're scaring my daughter and disturbing other customers. I'm asking you one more time to please move along." His voice carried an authority that he had developed during his years working in construction management, where he often had to deal with difficult personalities and tense situations. The woman behind him spoke up for the first time, her voice shaky but determined. "Please, I just want to get my groceries and go home. I haven't done anything to you guys." Her plea seemed to have the opposite effect on the teenagers, who laughed and made more crude comments about her voice and appearance. Marcus realized that reasoning wasn't going to work with these kids. They were clearly looking for trouble and had found it in this poor woman who was just trying to shop. He glanced around quickly, noting that while other customers were watching, no one else seemed willing to get involved. A store employee was visible in the distance but hadn't noticed the commotion yet. The situation was reaching a breaking point, and Marcus knew he had to make a choice. He could take Emma and walk away, leaving the woman to deal with the harassment on her own. Or he could continue to stand his ground and hope that his presence alone would be enough to make the teenagers back down. Either way, his daughter was watching, learning about courage, consequence, and what it meant to protect others who couldn't protect themselves. The sound of approaching footsteps made everyone turn. A store manager in a crisp white shirt and black tie was walking briskly toward them, clearly having noticed the disturbance. The three teenagers immediately straightened up, their cocky attitudes shifting as they realized they were about to face adult authority. "What's going on here?" the manager asked, his eyes taking in the scattered cereal on the floor and the obvious tension between the group. His name tag read Mr. Williams, and he had the tired look of someone who had dealt with difficult customers many times before. The teenager in the backwards cap tried to play innocent. "Nothing, sir. We were just talking to this lady here, and this guy started hassling us for no reason." He gestured at Marcus with fake confusion, as if he couldn't understand why anyone would have a problem with their behavior. Marcus felt his frustration rise, but he kept his voice calm and factual. These young men were making this woman uncomfortable, with inappropriate comments. When I asked them to leave her alone, they became aggressive and knocked merchandise off the shelf. He pointed to the mess of cereal around their feet. Mr. Williams looked at the woman, who nodded nervously. "Is this true, ma'am?" he asked gently. She glanced at the teenagers, clearly worried about making things worse for herself, but then looked down at Emma, who was still pressed against Marcus's side. "Yes," she said quietly. "They were following me around the store and saying things that made me very uncomfortable. This man stepped in to help when I couldn't get them to leave me alone." Her voice grew stronger as she spoke, and Marcus could see her gaining confidence from having support. The manager's expression hardened as he turned back to the teenagers. "I'm going to have to ask you three to leave the store immediately. If you come back and cause any more trouble, I'll be calling the police." His tone left no room for argument, and the boys seemed to realize their fun was over. The shortest one, still trying to maintain his tough attitude, pointed at Marcus. "This isn't over, man. We'll remember your face." It was an empty threat, but it sent a chill through Marcus as he thought about Emma's safety. These weren't dangerous criminals, but they were young and stupid, which could sometimes be just as unpredictable. "Actually, it is over," Mr. Williams said firmly. "Security cameras recorded everything that happened here. If you harass this gentleman or his family, or if you bother this lady again, you'll be dealing with more than just me." He pulled out his radio and spoke into it quietly, presumably calling for additional security to escort the teenagers out. The three boys exchanged glances, realizing they were outnumbered and outmaneuvered. The tallest one shrugged and started walking away. "Whatever, this store sucks anyway." The other two followed, still muttering complaints and throwing dirty looks over their shoulders, but clearly defeated. As they disappeared around the corner, Marcus felt the tension leave his shoulders. Emma looked up at him with wide, admiring eyes. "Daddy, you were really brave," she said, her voice full of pride. "Those boys were being really mean to that lady." The woman approached them hesitantly, clutching her shopping basket. She was prettier than Marcus had initially noticed, with long brown hair and kind eyes that were still showing traces of fear and gratitude. "I can't thank you enough," she said, her voice emotional. "I've been dealing with harassment like that for months, and no one has ever stepped in to help me before." Marcus felt awkward accepting praise for what seemed like basic human decency. "Anyone would have done the same thing," he said, but even as he spoke, he knew that wasn't true. He had seen the other customers walk past, avoiding involvement. "No, They wouldn't have, she insisted. Trust me on that. My name is Jennifer, by the way. Jennifer Chen. She held out her hand, and Marcus shook it, noticing that her grip was firm despite her earlier fear. Marcus Thompson, he replied. And this is my daughter, Emma. Emma waved shyly from behind his leg, still processing everything that had happened. Mr. Williams had returned after ensuring the teenagers left the building. I apologize for what happened in our store, he told Jennifer. We pride ourselves on providing a safe shopping environment for all our customers. Is there anything we can do to make this right? Jennifer smiled, the first genuine smile Marcus had seen from her. Actually, having customers like Mr. Thompson here who are willing to help others makes me feel much safer shopping here. You handled the situation perfectly. The manager looked relieved and grateful. He turned to Marcus with respect in his eyes. Sir, I want to thank you for stepping in. We train our employees to handle these situations, but having customers who look out for each other makes our job much easier. I'd like to offer you a discount on your groceries today as a small token of our appreciation. Marcus started to decline, but Emma tugged on his shirt. Daddy, we could use the money for my science project supplies, she whispered loudly, making both adults smile. The innocence of her practical thinking lightened the mood considerably. In that case, we'd be happy to accept, Marcus said, ruffling Emma's hair affectionately. This little scientist has big plans that require a lot of materials. Jennifer laughed, and the sound was warm and genuine. What kind of science project are you working on, Emma? She asked, crouching down to Emma's level with genuine interest. Emma's shyness disappeared as she launched into an enthusiastic explanation of her volcano project, complete with hand gestures and sound effects. And then the baking soda and vinegar. Make it explode like a real volcano. Daddy's going to help me paint the mountain and everything. That sounds amazing, Jennifer said, her eyes lighting up with enthusiasm that matched Emma's. I actually work in environmental science, so I know a lot about real volcanoes. Did you know that some volcanoes can create their own weather systems? Marcus watched the interaction between his daughter and this kind stranger with growing appreciation. It had been a long time since he'd seen Emma connect so easily with a new adult. Most of the single women he occasionally met seemed uncomfortable around children, or worse, they treated Emma like an obstacle to overcome rather than an integral part of his life. As they continued talking about science and volcanoes, Marcus found himself studying Jennifer more closely. There was something genuine about her interest in Emma that went beyond politeness. She wasn't just being nice to the kid to impress the father. She genuinely seemed to enjoy talking to his daughter, and Emma was clearly basking in the attention from someone who took her interests seriously. The conversation about volcanoes continued as they walked through the store together, with Jennifer helping Emma add items to their shopping list that could enhance her science project. Marcus found himself relaxing in a way he hadn't experienced in years. There was something refreshing about talking to another adult who didn't look at him with pity when they learned he was a widowed single father. You know, Jennifer said as they passed the craft supplies aisle, if you want to make your volcano really special, you could add some red food coloring to the eruption mixture. It makes it look much more realistic. She grabbed a small bottle of red dye from the shelf and handed it to Emma, who accepted it like a precious treasure. Can we, Daddy? Please? Emma asked, bouncing on her toes with excitement. Marcus smiled and added the food coloring to their cart, enjoying his daughter's enthusiasm more than he had in months. As they continued shopping, Jennifer shared stories about her work studying environmental impacts of industrial development. Marcus found himself genuinely interested in her career, asking questions about her research and sharing his own experiences from the construction side of development projects. It was the first adult conversation he'd had in weeks that didn't revolve around Emma's school schedule or his work deadlines. It's refreshing to talk to someone who understands both sides of the development equation, Jennifer said as they waited in the checkout line. Most people I meet either think all development is evil or that environmental concerns are just obstacles to progress. You actually get the complexity of it. Marcus felt a warmth spread through his chest at her words. It had been so long since someone had appreciated his perspective on anything beyond his ability to provide for Emma or fix things around the house. It helps that I've seen what happens when projects don't take environmental factors seriously, he admitted. Some of the biggest disasters I've witnessed were caused by shortcuts that seemed cost-effective at the time. Emma had been listening to their conversation with the intense focus that 8-year-olds reserved for adult topics they found mysteriously important. "Jennifer," she said suddenly, "do you like pizza?" Both adults laughed at the unexpected question. "I love pizza," Jennifer replied. "Why do you ask?" "Because Daddy makes really good pizza on Saturdays and we always have too much left over," Emma explained with the straightforward logic of childhood. "You could come eat it with us if you want. Daddy doesn't have very many friends to invite over." Marcus felt his face heat up with embarrassment. "Emma, you can't just invite people over like that," he said gently. But Jennifer was smiling warmly at his daughter's directness. "Actually, that sounds wonderful," Jennifer said, surprising them both. "But only if it's really okay with your dad. I don't want to impose on your Saturday family time." Marcus found himself caught between surprise and genuine pleasure at the prospect of having Jennifer join them. "It's not an imposition at all," he said, meaning it more than he expected. "Emma's right that we always make too much food. We'd love to have you over." They exchanged phone numbers and Jennifer promised to text him later in the week to confirm the details. As they parted ways in the parking lot, Marcus couldn't help but notice how different he felt compared to when they'd first entered the store. What had started as a routine grocery trip with an unpleasant confrontation had somehow transformed into something that felt like hope. During the drive home, Emma chattered excitedly about Jennifer and all the things she wanted to show her when she came for pizza. "She's really smart, Daddy. And she didn't talk to me like I'm just a little kid. She talked to me like my science project was important." "It is important," Marcus assured her. But he understood what Emma meant. Jennifer had treated his daughter with respect and genuine interest, not the patronizing attention that many adults gave to children. That evening, after Emma was asleep, Marcus found himself thinking about the day's events. He hadn't been looking for romance or even new friendship. His life had settled into a comfortable routine of work, Emma, and the occasional evening out with his brother or old friends from work. The idea of adding someone new to their small family unit had seemed impossible, even undesirable. But Jennifer felt different somehow. She hadn't seemed put off by Emma's presence or tried to monopolize his attention. Instead, she had included Emma in their conversations naturally, treating her as a full participant rather than an interruption. That meant more to Marcus than Jennifer probably realized. His phone buzzed with a text message. "Hi Marcus, this is Jennifer. I wanted to thank you again for today. I've been thinking about how brave Emma was too, watching her dad stand up for a stranger. You're raising an amazing daughter. Looking forward to Saturday. P.S. Should I bring anything besides my appetite?" Marcus stared at the message for several minutes before responding. The genuine warmth in her words, the way she had noticed Emma's bravery rather than just his own, and her obvious excitement about spending time with both of them rather than just him. It all felt different from any interaction he'd had with a woman since Sarah's death. He typed back, "Just bring yourself. Emma is already planning to show you her rock collection and her art projects. Fair warning. Once she starts talking about rocks, it's hard to get her to stop. See you Saturday around 6? Her response came quickly. "I love rocks. Can't wait to hear all about them. 6 is perfect." Marcus set his phone down with a smile he hadn't felt in a long time. For the first time since becoming a single father, he was looking forward to sharing his Saturday evening with someone new. More importantly, he was excited for Emma to have another adult in her life who treated her with genuine interest and respect. As he got ready for bed, Marcus reflected on how strange life could be. He had gone to the store planning to buy groceries and had ended up defending a stranger, impressing his daughter, and possibly making a new friend who might become something more. Sometimes the most significant moments in life happened when you were just trying to do the right thing. The thought occurred to him that Sarah would have been proud of how he'd handled the situation today. She had always believed in standing up for others, and she would have loved seeing Emma's reaction to his courage. Maybe, he thought, as he drifted off to sleep. It was time to start believing that their little family of two could grow without losing what made them special. Saturday arrived with Emma bouncing around the house from the moment she woke up. She had reorganized her rock collection 3 times, practiced her volcano demonstration twice, and asked Marcus at least a dozen times what time Jennifer would arrive. By 5 o'clock, Marcus was starting to feel nervous himself, though he couldn't quite pinpoint why. "Daddy, do you think Jennifer will like my painted rocks?" Emma asked for the 4th time, holding up a smooth stone she had decorated with colorful stripes and dots. "I think she'll love them," Marcus assured her, checking the pizza dough that had been rising all afternoon. Making pizza from scratch had been one of the few cooking skills he'd mastered since Sarah's death, mostly because Emma loved helping with the process, and it gave them something fun to do together on weekends. When the doorbell rang at exactly 6 o'clock, Emma raced to answer it before Marcus could stop her. "Jennifer, you came. Come see my rocks," she exclaimed, grabbing Jennifer's hand and pulling her toward the living room before she had even fully stepped inside. Jennifer laughed and allowed herself to be dragged along, calling over her shoulder to Marcus, "I brought some sparkling cider and a bag of those fancy cheese crackers Emma mentioned she liked when we were talking about snacks in the store." Marcus felt a warm surprise at her thoughtfulness. He hadn't even remembered Emma mentioning the crackers, but Jennifer had not only listened but acted on it. It was such a small thing, but it showed a level of attention and care that touched him deeply. For the next hour, Jennifer sat on the living room floor with Emma, examining each rock in the collection with scientific curiosity and genuine enthusiasm. She asked questions about where Emma had found each stone, what made them special, and even shared some geological facts that made Emma's eyes light up with wonder. "This one is really special," Jennifer said, holding up a piece of quartz that Emma had found at the beach the previous summer. "See how it's formed? This type of crystal structure takes thousands of years to develop. You found something that's older than our entire civilization." Emma's mouth fell open with amazement. "Really? It's that old?" She took the rock back and stared at it with new reverence, as if she was holding a piece of ancient history in her small hands. Marcus watched from the kitchen doorway, pretending to check on the pizza while actually observing the interaction. Jennifer wasn't just being polite or patient with Emma. She was genuinely engaged, treating his daughter's interests with the same seriousness she would give to any adult conversation. It was exactly the kind of interaction he had hoped for, but hardly dared to expect. When they moved to the kitchen to assemble the pizzas, Jennifer rolled up her sleeves and jumped right into helping. She listened carefully as Emma explained their system for sauce distribution and cheese placement, then followed the 8-year-old's instructions with solemn precision that made Emma giggle with delight. "You're really good at listening to kids," Marcus observed as Jennifer carefully arranged pepperoni according to Emma's very specific pattern requirements. "I had a lot of practice," Jennifer replied with a smile. "I have 3 younger siblings, and I spent most of my teenage years babysitting neighborhood kids to earn money for college. Plus, kids usually have really interesting questions about science that adults are too embarrassed to ask." As if to prove her point, Emma immediately launched into a detailed inquiry about whether cheese could technically be considered a chemical reaction, which led to an animated discussion about proteins and fermentation that somehow managed to be both educational and entertaining. During dinner, the conversation flowed naturally between Emma's school adventures, Jennifer's work stories that she adapted to be kid-friendly, and Marcus's construction projects. Jennifer had a gift for drawing both father and daughter into discussions that made them all feel heard and valued. "So Emma tells me you built the treehouse in your backyard yourself," Jennifer said as they finished eating. "That's incredibly impressive. I can barely hang a picture frame straight." Marcus felt his cheeks warm at the compliment. "It wasn't too complicated once I figured out the weight distribution." Emma supervised the whole project to make sure it met her specifications for maximum fun potential. "I made sure it had a good view of the bird feeder and enough room for my sleeping bag," Emma added proudly. "Daddy let me help with the measuring and everything. I'm going to be an engineer like him when I grow up." "That's wonderful," Jennifer said. "The world needs more engineers, especially ones who think about both safety and fun like you two do." She looked at Marcus with something that might have been admiration, and he felt that familiar warmth spread through his chest again. After dinner, they moved to the back porch where Emma demonstrated her volcano science project with dramatic flair. Jennifer cheered at all the right moments and asked follow-up questions that sent Emma into detailed explanations about chemical reactions and geological processes that she only half understood, but explained with complete confidence as I. Emma ran around the yard burning off energy before bedtime. Marcus and Jennifer sat on the porch steps watching her play. The evening air was warm, and the comfortable silence between them felt natural rather than awkward. "Thank you for inviting me," Jennifer said quietly. "I can't remember the last time I had such a relaxing evening. You and Emma make a great team." Marcus looked at his daughter, who was now showing Jennifer's empty cider bottle how high she could make it fly by, throwing it in the air and catching it. "She's pretty amazing," he agreed. "I worry sometimes that I'm not enough for her, you know? That she needs more than just me." Jennifer turned to look at him with surprise. "Are you kidding? That little girl absolutely adores you. The way she talks about you, the way she looks at you when she thinks you're not paying attention. She thinks you hung the moon. You're raising a confident, curious, kind child who feels completely secure in your love. That's not something that happens by accident." Her words hit Marcus harder than he expected. He had spent so many nights worrying about whether he was failing Emma, whether she was missing out on important things because she only had one parent, whether his love was enough to make up for all the gaps in her life. "I just want her to have everything," he said softly. "All the opportunities, all the experiences, all the love and support she deserves. Sometimes I feel like I'm flying blind, making it up as I go along." "That's called being a parent," Jennifer said with a gentle laugh. "Even parents who have partners feel that way most of the time. The difference is that you're doing it all while also dealing with your own grief and rebuilding your life. The fact that Emma is so happy and confident is proof that you're succeeding, not failing." Marcus felt something tight in his chest begin to loosen. It had been so long since anyone had acknowledged how hard he was working or suggested that he might actually be doing a good job. Most people either avoided the topic of his single parenthood or offered advice that made him feel like he was missing something obvious. The next few weeks fell into a comfortable pattern. Jennifer started joining them for their Saturday pizza nights and gradually began appearing at other times too. She came to Emma's science fair presentation, cheering louder than any of the parents when Emma's volcano won second place. She helped Marcus fix a leaky faucet in the kitchen, bringing her own toolkit and showing Emma how different wrenches worked. More importantly, Jennifer never made Marcus feel like she was trying to replace Sarah or take over his role as Emma's parent. Instead, she seemed to understand instinctively that she was being invited into their existing family dynamic, not asked to recreate it. She brought her own energy and perspective while respecting the foundation that Marcus and Emma had built together. One evening in late September, after Emma had gone to bed, Marcus and Jennifer sat in the living room discussing their days. Jennifer had been telling him about a particularly frustrating meeting with city planners who didn't want to listen to environmental concerns about a new shopping center development. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm making any real difference," she said, curling up in the corner of the couch with a cup of tea. "It feels like I'm constantly fighting battles that I'm destined to lose." Marcus set down his own coffee and looked at her thoughtfully. "You know what Emma told me yesterday? She said she wants to be an engineer who helps scientists like Jennifer make sure buildings don't hurt the environment. That's your influence. You've shown her that someone can care about both progress and protection." Jennifer's eyes softened. "She really said that?" "She's been talking about it all week. She even checked out library books about green building design. An 8-year-old is learning about sustainable development because you showed her it was important." Marcus paused, then continued more quietly. "You've made a difference in our lives in ways you probably don't even realize." There was something in the air between them that felt different from their usual comfortable companionship. Jennifer set down her tea and looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "Marcus, I need to tell you something," she said, her voice serious, enough to make him sit up straighter. "I've been thinking about this for weeks, and I keep going back and forth about whether it's appropriate or fair to bring it up." Marcus felt his heart rate increase. Was she about to tell him she was moving away? That she had met someone else? That she didn't want to be part of their lives anymore? He realized in that moment how much he had come to depend on her presence, how much both he and Emma would miss her if she left. "What is it?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Jennifer took a deep breath. "I know this might sound crazy, and please feel free to say no if it's too much or too soon or just not right for you and Emma. But I've been offered a promotion at work." Marcus felt confused. That sounded like good news, not something she should be worried about telling him. "That's wonderful, Jennifer. You deserve it after all the hard work you've been putting in." "The thing is," she continued, "it would mean relocating to the regional office in Portland. It's a significant step up in responsibility and salary, and it's exactly the kind of position I've been working toward for years." Marcus felt his stomach drop. Portland was 8 hours away by car. It might as well be on the other side of the world as far as regular visits were concerned. He tried to keep his expression neutral, but he could feel his hopes for whatever had been developing between them crashing down around him. "When would you need to move?" he asked, proud of how calm his voice sounded. "That's what I wanted to talk to you about," Jennifer said, leaning forward with an intensity that surprised him. "The position doesn't start until January, so I have time to make arrangements. But Marcus, the thing is, I don't want to go." He stared at her, not understanding. "What do you mean?" "I mean that 3 months ago, I would have jumped at this opportunity without a second thought. I would have been on the phone accepting before they finished making the offer. But now," she gestured around the living room, which still showed signs of the evening's activities. Emma's homework spread across the coffee table, Marcus's work boots by the door, Jennifer's jacket draped over the back of a chair. "Now I have a life here that means more to me than any career advancement." Marcus felt like the ground was shifting under his feet. "Jennifer, you can't turn down your dream job because of us. Your career is too important, and Emma and I would never want to hold you back from something that could change your life." "But, don't you see?" Jennifer said, her voice growing stronger. "You and Emma have already changed my life. I've never felt like I belong somewhere the way I belong here with you two. I've never had someone trust me with their child the way you trust me with Emma. I've never felt like I was part of a family before." She paused, then continued with words that would later replay in Marcus's mind 1,000 times. "I know this is going to sound completely insane, but I have a proposal for you. What if, instead of me moving to Portland alone, you and Emma came with me?" Marcus felt his mouth fall open. Of all the things he had expected her to say, this wasn't even on the list. "Jennifer, we barely know each other. We've been friends for a few months. I can't uproot Emma's entire life based on a few months of friendship." "I know how it sounds," Jennifer said quickly. "And I know it's a huge thing to ask. But Marcus, I don't think this is just friendship anymore. And I don't think you think it is either. I see the way you look at me sometimes. I see how happy Emma is when I'm around. I see how much more relaxed you've become over the past few months." She was right, and Marcus knew it. What had started as gratitude and friendship had grown into something much deeper and more complex. He had found himself thinking about Jennifer, at work, looking forward to her texts, planning activities that he knew she would enjoy. More importantly, he had watched Emma bloom under Jennifer's attention and care in ways that had nothing to do with replacing her mother and everything to do with adding new love and support to her life. "Even if what you're saying is true," Marcus said carefully, "Portland is a big change. Emma has school here, friends, stability. I have a job, a mortgage, a life that I've spent 3 years building after Sarah died. I can't just abandon all of that on the hope that something might work out between us." Jennifer nodded as if she had expected this response. "I understand completely. And I'm not asking you to make a decision tonight or even this month. I'm just asking you to think about it. Portland has great schools, and Emma could have opportunities there that she might not get here. You could start your own consulting business instead of working for someone else. We could build something together that neither of us could create alone." Marcus felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of what she was proposing. It wasn't just about their relationship anymore. She was asking him to reimagine his entire future, to take the biggest risk he had ever considered, to trust that what they had found together was strong enough to build a life around. Marcus spent the next 2 weeks thinking about Jennifer's proposal from every possible angle. He researched schools in Portland, looked at housing prices, and even had a quiet conversation with his boss about the possibility of remote work or consulting opportunities. The more he investigated, the more feasible Jennifer's idea seemed from a practical standpoint. But practical wasn't the same as right, and he still hadn't figured out how to know the difference. Emma had noticed his distraction, asking several times why he seemed so quiet lately. Marcus had deflected her questions, not wanting to get her hopes up or worry her about changes that might never happen. But children were more observant than adults often gave them credit for, and Emma was particularly tuned in to her father's moods. The decision point came during their regular Saturday pizza night. Jennifer had been giving Marcus space to think, not pressuring him for an answer but clearly hoping for some indication of his thoughts. Emma, oblivious to the undercurrent of tension between the adults, was chattering about her upcoming Halloween costume and whether Jennifer would be there to see her trick-or-treating. "Of course I'll be here for Halloween," Jennifer assured her. But Marcus caught the slight uncertainty in her voice. If he decided against Portland, would Jennifer stay? Would she turn down her dream job for a man who wasn't willing to take the same risk for her? After Emma went to bed, Marcus found Jennifer washing dishes in the kitchen, her movements more careful and deliberate than usual. He could tell she was nervous, and he realized that his silence over the past 2 weeks had probably been harder on her than he'd intended. "Jennifer," he said quietly, "we need to talk." She turned off the water and dried her hands slowly, as if preparing herself for bad news. "I know this is a lot to ask," she began, but Marcus held up a hand to stop her. "Let me say something first," he said. "When Sarah died, I thought my life was essentially over except for raising Emma. I figured I'd focus on being the best father I could be, and that would be enough. I never expected to find someone who could fit into our lives the way you have." Jennifer's eyes were bright with unshed tears, but she remained silent, letting him continue. "You've brought something back to both of us that I didn't even realize. We were missing. Emma is happier and more confident than she's been since her mother died. And me?" Marcus paused, struggling to find the right words. "I feel like myself again when I'm with you. Not the grieving widower, not the overwhelmed single father. Just me." "But?" Jennifer asked softly, clearly hearing the hesitation in his voice. Marcus took a deep breath. "But I'm scared. I'm scared of making the wrong choice for Emma. I'm scared of taking such a huge risk based on feelings that are still so new. I'm scared of what happens if we try this and it doesn't work out." Jennifer stepped closer to him, her expression gentle but determined. "Marcus, I'm scared too. I'm terrified of leaving everything I know behind. I'm terrified of taking on the responsibility of being part of Emma's life in such a major way. I'm terrified that you'll always see me as the woman you met during a crisis rather than someone you chose to build a life with." She reached for his hands, and he let her take them. "But I'm more scared of spending the rest of my life wondering what could have happened if we'd been brave enough to try. I'm more scared of losing what we have because we were too afraid to fight for it." Marcus looked down at their joined hands, thinking about all the moments over the past few months that had led to this conversation. Jennifer teaching Emma about rocks and volcanoes. Jennifer listening to his work stories with genuine interest. Jennifer fitting so naturally into their Saturday routines that it felt like she had always been there. Jennifer standing up for him when Emma proudly introduced her to other parents at the science fair as Daddy's friend who knows about everything. "There's something I haven't told you," Marcus said finally. "Last week, Emma asked me if you were going to be her new mom." Jennifer's breath caught, and Marcus could see her trying to read his expression for clues about how he had answered. "What did you tell her?" she asked. "I told her that relationships are complicated and that adults need time to figure things out. But then she said something that's been stuck in my head ever since." Marcus managed a small smile at the memory. She said, "Daddy, I know you loved Mommy and you still miss her, But Jennifer loves us right now and we love her too. Isn't that enough to try? Jennifer's tears finally spilled over, and Marcus reached up to wipe them away gently. An 8-year-old figured out what I've been struggling with for weeks. It's not about having guarantees or knowing exactly how everything will work out. It's about recognizing something precious when you find it and being willing to protect it. Does that mean... Jennifer started, but Marcus interrupted her with a kiss that answered her question more clearly than words ever could. When they broke apart, both of them were smiling through tears. It means yes? Marcus said. Yes to Portland? Yes to taking this risk together. Yes to seeing what kind of life we can build as a family. Jennifer hugged him so tightly that he could barely breathe, but he didn't care. For the first time since Sarah's death, he felt like he was moving toward something instead of just surviving each day. It was terrifying and exhilarating, and absolutely right. There's just one condition, Marcus said, pulling back to look at her seriously. We tell Emma together, and we make sure she knows that this is her choice too. If she's not ready for such a big change, we find another way to make this work. Agreed, Jennifer said without hesitation. Emma's happiness and security come first. Always. As it turned out, Emma's reaction to their news was pure 8-year-old enthusiasm. Portland has mountains and ocean? She asked, her eyes wide with excitement. And Jennifer will be there with us every day? Can I have my own room in our new house? Will there be good rocks to collect? 3 months later, as Marcus packed the last boxes in their old house, he found a small framed photo that Emma had made during one of their first evenings with Jennifer. It was a crayon drawing of 3 stick figures holding hands in front of a house with "My Family" written across the top in Emma's careful handwriting. He showed it to Jennifer, who was labeling boxes in the kitchen. She drew this after your second pizza night with us, he told her. I found it in her room weeks later, but I never had the courage to ask her about it. Jennifer looked at the drawing with tears in her eyes. She knew before we did, she said softly. Kids usually do. Marcus agreed, carefully wrapping the drawing and placing it in the box marked Emma's room, first things. Soon they would start unpacking in Portland, building new routines and new memories while keeping the best parts of what they had already created together. As they loaded the moving truck, Marcus thought about the day in the grocery store that had started everything. He had simply tried to do the right thing, to protect someone who needed help. He had never imagined that one moment of courage could lead to such profound changes in all their lives. Jennifer appeared beside him, holding Emma's hand as they watched their furniture disappear into the truck. Ready for our adventure? She asked, and Marcus could hear the excitement mixed with nervousness in her voice. We're ready, Emma declared before Marcus could answer, and he realized that his daughter's confidence was exactly what he needed to hear. They were ready to start over, to take risks, to build something new together while honoring everything that had brought them to this moment. Sometimes the most important decisions in life came disguised as ordinary moments, and sometimes protecting others led to finding the protection and love you didn't even know you needed. Marcus had learned both lessons in a grocery store aisle, and now he was about to discover what came next.